Hey, well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining our first webinar of the year. This is Maximizing the Impact of Your IRIS Reports, Insights and Strategies for 2025. We have a few people rolling in here, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Lauren Grossman. I am the Communications and Membership Coordinator at IRIS. That's the Institute for Research on Innovation and Science. Today, we are going to talk a bit about IRIS reports and how these can be used to meet some of the communication needs of the day. We are also going to hear from one of our member universities about their experience with IRIS membership. So I have some colleagues on the call monitoring the chat. Feel free to submit any questions along the way in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll also have a few minutes at the end for questions. And we have quite a few people here now. So with that, we'll get started. So IRIS is a member-based consortium of 27 public and private universities anchored on a IRB-approved repository at the University of Michigan. So our members submit administrative data, and IRIS works with that data to turn it into reports and data products to help tell the story about the immense value of public research. So why are we talking about this now? We actually just released our most recent series of spending government reports. So this is an opportunity to highlight those. But we also know that research is responsible for saving lives and developing technology and helping us understand the world around us. And we often measure this success in terms of long-term results, like scientific papers published or patents. But long before we get to that point, we also need to hire people and purchase goods and services necessary to do the work. And so this creates a lot of economic and social benefits that aren't always understood or communicated. So now more than ever, we know it's especially critical for research universities in particular to be able to demonstrate this everyday public value that they create. And with that, I'm going to share my screen so we can start to look at the reports. All right, so we should be looking at a picture of the IRIS spending report. So this is the first report I want to talk to you about today, and this really shows this impact I was talking about. This IRIS spending report is, today we're looking at an aggregate report, but if you are a university member, you actually have another report just like this, but just for your institution. So for this example today, I've set it up to look at our aggregate report that includes all IRIS members with data for fiscal year 2024. And I've customized it to only look at expenditures made on federal awards. And so this spending report gives us a high-level snapshot of some of the economic and social impacts of direct expenditures made through research awards. And it tells us who's doing the research work, how they are funded, and where geographically research dollars are being spent. So beginning with the first two charts at the top, we get this picture of who is working on research at these universities. And again, this is an aggregate report of 27 IRIS universities that we have data for this fiscal year. And so specifically in this first report or this first chart, we're looking at the number and occupational categories of employees and the grants they were paid on. So we can see in fiscal year 24, over 46% of the individuals supported by federal research funding at these universities were students, which is significant because these are early career professionals. When they graduate, they are taking these skills with them into the workforce. We also see a high number of staff. And these reports are great because they are interactive. So when I click on this staff bar, I can actually see the top 10 job titles within each category. So we have research assistants, we have interviewers, associates, and so on. So this gives you an idea of who is part of that research team. And we know that research awards are essential for training this highly skilled workforce. So this next section looks at which agencies are funding the research workforce. So this is a list of the top 8 funding agencies ranked by employee count. And you can actually hover over the stacked bar graph to see what percent of employees are students, staff, or faculty. And for easier comparison across agencies, you can actually reorder this list. So we can see, for example, in fiscal year 24, NIH was the largest sponsor of research employees at Iris member universities, and combined, students and trainees made up the majority of the research workforce. The next two sections I want to look at are tell you a little bit more about the economic impact of your research spending. And this is by looking at direct expenditures with vendors and subawardees. So research grants to universities also directly support businesses in all sectors of the economy. And as you can see, it's across the entire country. So anything that was purchased to support research, from microscopes to building contractors, other lab equipment, we can match it to a physical location, and it's shown on this map. So we can see that research-related spending on federal grants to all IRIS member universities exceeded $1.8 billion in fiscal year 24, and it included transactions with vendors in almost half of all U.S. counties. And another view of research expenditures I want to show you is this same map, but it's looking at the same map, but for congressional districts. So this is a county map. But if we go up to the congressional district map tab, and I've actually pre-opened one here for us, we can see all of these expenditures by congressional district. And so if you wanted, you could also on this page filter to look at just payments to vendors or just payments to subawards. And so if you wanted to see how an award to one university can benefit a university or center in another community through subawards, this is a great way to do that. And so all of these reports that I'm showing to you today are printable. They're designed to be shared as standalone communications pieces or dug through to find concrete connections between these research activities and benefits to real people. So you can see how this helps you talk about research impact in a way that resonates with different audiences. So they could be used in conversations internally with board members and government relations teams for communication strategies, leadership talking points, but also in external communications on websites or in conversations with congressional district staffers. And for this next set of reports, I actually do want to show you ones that are specific to government relations teams. So some of our biggest users at universities tend to be government relations people who want to be able to build relationships with their state legislators or their congressional staffers. And these reports are a great tool to open up that conversation about how research spending is directly impacting their particular district or region. So this is a different report. This first report I will show you, this is the Congressional District Fact Sheet. It also has a twin called the State Legislative Fact Sheet. And like the spending report, members get these state level reports for their specific institutions, but we also have the ability to make aggregate reports. So for this example, I'm showing you an aggregate version of the fact sheet that we specifically made for our Texas IRIS members to help them talk about the collective impact of their research enterprises in Texas. So we're fortunate at IRIS, we have 7 universities who are Texas-based that are IRIS members, so we can make this fact sheet for them. And they have some high-level talking points regarding the number and types of employees, where funding is coming from, vendor impact in the state, how much was spent in everyone's districts. So we can see in fiscal year 24, these 7 universities employed nearly 11,000 individuals, federal research awards, over half of whom were students. And research-related expenditures supported vendors in all 38 of their congressional districts. And so when you scroll down, you can actually see this broken down by representative by congressional district for the entire state. And all the way down here at the bottom, we also have a view of this as a map that you can, scroll over, click on, get some more information. And one other view, so this is congressional district, we have a state legislative version. Another view of congressional districts we have is the congressional district detail report. And again, this report I'm showing you is one for an aggregate report for all of our IRIS member universities. It looks at the last 5 fiscal years, but when you're a member, you also have access to this personalized report as well, just for your university. So like the last fact sheet looked at Your in-state spending, this one looks at spending in every congressional district in the entire country. So all you would do would be to click on a state, if we wanted to look at Nebraska. And then we can either click or select a congressional district, and we get some information, very high level information about spending in that district. So these first three numbers here are pulled from iPads. This just provides a little context about how many colleges and universities are there, how many people are working there, the number of students. And then these other two numbers talk about the actual spending and the number of businesses supported in that specific district. And you can also download this as a PDF. So if you wanted to bring this with you as a leave behind in a meeting with your congressperson, you want to talk about specific impact in a certain industry, the PDF version has the same information and also a few other bullet points that you can look at that cover things like the top 5 vendors or subawardees and the industry that they were spent in. So you can see this whole map you could explore and find a lot of different insights depending on your goals. And so, these are really interesting insights, but, why does that matter? So if you've been following the news, there's a lot of uncertainty right now around the future of federal funding for research. And we know that federal research grants to universities support new discoveries and innovations, but we can see in these reports, they also support hundreds and thousands of people and employees and vendors without whom this research wouldn't be possible. And so these reports are really some essential tools that help us understand and frame the way that research universities touch the lives of employers and workers and communities across the country who might be far removed from campus, but are still feeling the benefits. And these insights allow us to meet audiences where their interests are and address some of today's concerns head on. So, for example, in the last 15 minutes, I've shown you real numbers that demonstrate that, research depends on this broad scientific workforce. These grants go on to train people who then power the knowledge economy. We can see a lot of federal grants are fueling the research at universities, and that these funds contribute to the purchase of goods and services, and that these then benefit, nearly every county and every congressional district in the United States. And I want to point out these are just some of the reports available through IRIS. This congressional district map and the all IRIS spending report is actually available on our website, so anyone can look at those. We also have reports looking at vendors and industries and employee outcomes. And so when we think about strategies for 2025, one of the top ones is really communication. We want our members to be able to have tools to generate talking points, to share that economic impact with elected officials, and really connect their research efforts to benefits felt by people in their district or in their state. And since IRIS is a consortium, these reports really are a unique collaborative effort on the part of research universities to pull our information together to help show and ensure that people can understand and explain these benefits, and ultimately also protect their research enterprise. And with that, I actually want to give us an opportunity to hear from one of our members and introduce our guest who kindly agreed to share a bit of her experience using these reports. Rebecca Dudensing is the Executive Director of Economic Development within the Office of the President at Texas A&M University, one of our 7 Texas universities at IRIS, and they have been a member since 2019. And Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll hand it over to you to share a bit about your experience with IRIS reports and how your office has leveraged them.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. My colleague, Mike Hardy, with our Government Relations Office, wasn't able to be here today. And that's a shame because we actually use the reports very differently. And I won't speak a whole lot about how he uses them, but obviously he's going to members' offices and meeting with their staff, and he's taking these sorts of materials and talking about what our research enterprise looks like and how it affects their district. And it is incredibly convenient not to be pulling these numbers together ourselves. And it's really helpful as well when we think about committees and so forth to be able to measure ourselves against other universities. And within the report, when you're a member, you can select which member universities you want to compare yourselves against. So, we're looking at other land grants and so forth, saying, okay, so how do we measure up? And we were actually discussing this in our staff meeting on Monday, because GR is obviously also part of the Office of the President in terms of some of the changes that are coming down and potential changes in research funding and what that means for economic development, and that being a message that often resonates with congressional members. And so being able to see easily how many people are employed on some of these grants and what that means, not only to us, but to our vendors in their districts and the people we work with is incredibly important. From the economic development side, I'm actually looking at the reports a little bit differently because I want to know how we're spending and with whom and on what within more communities. And so that report that Lauren was showing, the spending report, when we get down to our Texas map of counties, I'm more interested in the counties than I am in the congressional districts usually, because you get around Houston, we have a lot of really tiny little congressional districts. And so, Harris County. And so I'll go into Harris County and click through and look at that, or I'll go into the impact report is probably the thing that I use the most. And I know I'm going to meet with the Greater Houston Partnership, or I know I'm meeting with our local Brazos Valley Economic Development Corporation. And I'm looking to see, okay, so what grants are we, because we can actually go in and find out who the vendors are that we really have large contracts with. And in fact, within even the spending report, you can click and you can see who are the major players in that county. But within the impact report, I'm going to dive in and find, especially for the target industries that we may be talking about in a given meeting, or that we know are the target for that area of the state, and seeing, okay, so where we have relationships with some of their large players, looking to see what contracts they're working with, who they're working with, because you can look through into the research and I know what PI is on a project that a vendor is connected to, and they may be connected to 6 different projects, and I can see each of the PIs and a brief explanation of the type of work that we're doing. So it's really handy to be able to get a snapshot of that and go in. So sometimes I'm not a huge one for personally printing off PDFs, although that's convenient, but I'm putting together my own materials and pulling information off here and just sourcing that this is where we got it from. So that's incredibly helpful to be able to do that and provide real examples to our economic development partners, whether they're bringing in people that are prospects for them or whether we're just talking about how we might want to strategize for the future. It's also interesting in the employment reports to see where our folks are going. We have internally reports about where our students are coming from, and we know where we have the placements going back from our graduates, but seeing in terms of, where are our researchers going? And so Jason's book a few years ago, talking about being both a hub and an anchor, his research university's book, a part of that is not only knowing what our students are doing, but what our researchers are doing as well, and the types of relationships that we're forming. So that's really interesting for us. And then I think the other one that's kind of interesting is that vendor report. And we're really just in the beginning of how we use the vendor reports. We've got our economic impact study, as do most universities. We're starting to dig in more, looking at our hub vendors, our local vendors, and working our office with finance to figure out, okay, so where are we spending? How are we spending? How can we maybe make some better relationships in terms of being an anchor in the community and being a really strong partner for our local businesses? And so it's also interesting to compare ourselves then to other IRIS members, because when we look at how we're buying from small businesses, the percent of our vendors, about 10%, that's pretty on par with other research universities that are part of the consortium. We're not spending as much with those vendors. And so when we look there and say, gosh, what are we doing differently there? And so it's a place for us to really dig in. Sometimes it's just a matter of being able to go out and talk to people. Other times it really is a matter of being able to dig in a little bit more and say, gosh, what are we doing differently and what could we be doing more? So that's really how I use it. But it's a neat tool. I think our biggest thing is, because there are so many different users, making sure that all the right people, because it's never the people who use it that are responsible for putting in the data, right? So it's internally making sure that the people who have access to that data understand how important it is for us for them to get it to Iris so that we can be using that on the other side to support the research.
That's amazing. Thank you, Rebecca. And yeah, it's neat to see there's so many possible applications for these reports, and you basically just ran through so many of them. So it's great to hear the different ways they've been putting to work. And I know Michael couldn't be here, but on the federal relations side, these are great reports to kind of open up conversations with people. But I loved what you mentioned about making sure all the right people see it. And so I think one of the biggest things for our members is just ensuring that making sure they know that these are shareable, these are, you can do all sorts of different things with them, but the most important thing is that we're going out and communicating this impact and using it to kind of inform strategies. So you just gave like a beautiful example of how that might look. um, and I want to, in the last few minutes here, also open it up to any guests to put questions in the chat or the Q&A for the Iris team or for Rebecca. Or if you are here as part of an Iris member university, I would love to hear your thoughts as well. How have you used reports? What kind of impact have you seen? And I'm going to open up the chat here. All right. And so one question that just came in from Mark, the district reports seem incredibly useful. Is there a way to view the data by state level district instead of just federal? And I actually have our data science lead on the team here, or on the call here today, Kevin Bjorn. And I wonder, Kevin, since this is a data question, if you would mind jumping on and talking a little bit about different ways we can slice these reports.
Yeah, sure. So we actually do have a canned report called the State Legislative Fact Sheet, very similar to the Congressional District Fact Sheet, that outlines spending as well as a variety of different data points aggregated at the state legislative level. So it covers a variety of different data points, from how much money is spent in those state legislative districts, as well as some employment information and business information related to those districts. And then, as I think Lauren pointed out, we do also do this at the county level. And then, of course, as you all saw, at the congressional district level.
Great. And so we can see what Kevin was just mentioning, this is the state legislative fact sheet, again, for that aggregated SPUPSI group of Texas members. But if we scroll down, we can see we have all the state Senate districts, all the names, and then spending by state legislative district as well. Feel free to continue putting questions in. While we wait, I want to expand on a few more things that Rebecca mentioned, which is that you can print off these reports. They're meant to be ready to share, but you can also actually download the underlying data underneath each report. So if you had your own data visualization tool, you wanted to redo these charts in your own brand colors, create graphics for your website, the data is downloadable. And we also have some other neat features in the university spending reports, like the benchmarking. So you can benchmark yourself against a group of other Iris University members, and it'll kind of show you where you can compare on certain things like the number of students employed and in-state vendor spending and so on. All right, Kevin, another data question for you. How often is the data updated?
Yeah, so we update the data twice a year. So once in October, November, and then once in April, May. And we ingest data from our members during those timeframes, and then we merge that data with roughly 60 different data sets, both public and private, some that we purchase, some that we download, some that we get from the federal government, to do all the different data improvements before we generate the different metrics that make it into the reports. And I will say, now that Lauren's pulled me in, these reports tend to be high-level administrative reports. So they're easily digestible by anybody who uses them. There is a lot of data points and metrics that can be generated from the underlying data that's accessible to all of our members upon request. So any IRIS member that has an idea or wants to explore any kind of data metrics that isn't in a report, all they have to do is reach out to us, and we usually pull those together relatively quickly, ad hoc, when they need it.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. Well, while we wait for any more questions to come in the last few minutes, I'll just remind folks that if you are interested in what you've seen here today and you're not yet a member, or if you are a member and you would like to learn more about the different functionality behind a lot of the reports and some of the opportunities that Kevin just mentioned that we can work with on your data, please reach out to us. We are really here to help you get the most out of your reports. And I'll also send a follow-up email with more information to all of our attendees today. And with that, okay. And with that, I don't see any other questions coming in. So I would just like to say thank you again, everyone who attended today, and thank you, Rebecca, for agreeing to share Texas A&M's experience as an IRIS member. I hope this information has been very helpful. It's definitely something that's been at the top of a lot of our minds lately in terms of, federal funding for research and the impact of research universities in general. And so I would like to thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to staying in touch with you. Thank you.